All right, so get ready to dive into ancient Athens with Aristophanes' comedy, The Clouds.
Okay.
You've brought some seriously interesting sources, and I'm ready to I'm ready to get my toga on and explore these satirical jabs at Socrates
Yeah.
and see what this play reveals about Athenian society back then.
Well, you know what's really wild about The Clouds is that it really is like a comedic time capsule.
Okay.
It's Athens. Imagine like in the middle of the Peloponnesian War, right? You've got political turmoil,
Right.
new ideas are challenged, like the old guard.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of uncertainty about the future.
Yeah.
And Aristophanes uses humor to kind of hold up a mirror to all of that.
So it's like he's like throwing a roast of Athenian society, right?
Yeah.
But with some like seriously thought-provoking punchlines.
Yep. Exactly. And one of those punchlines, believe it or not, revolves around, get this, Athenians' love of lawsuits.
Real?
Yeah. The source material even points out that it was practically a national pastime.
Wait, they loved a good lawsuit.
Oh, yeah.
What's the deeper dive on that? Like, was it just a very litigious society, or is Aristophanes hinting at something more?
That's the million-dollar question, right? I mean,
Sure.
on the surface, yeah, it's a funny little quirk, right? But when you think about it, this obsession with legal battles, it could point to like deeper anxieties within Athenian society, you know, a reflection of all that instability and fragmentation that they were experiencing.
Right.
It's like their national pastime was a symptom of a society just grappling with massive change.
Okay, I'm starting to see how like even the seemingly small details in this play point to much bigger issues.
Precisely. And this leads us to, of course, one of the play's most interesting figures, Socrates.
Yeah, yes. Socrates.
Yes.
The philosopher extraordinaire.
Right. Yeah.
Although in The Clouds, he's presented as, a bit of an eccentric figure, obsessed with gnats and hanging out in a basket.
Yeah.
Not exactly the imposing figure we usually picture.
And that's the brilliance of Aristophanes' satirical approach, right? He's not necessarily going after the historical Socrates, directly.
Right.
He's using Socrates as this kind of stand-in for this broader group of thinkers called the Sophists.
Ah, the Sophists. Give us the lowdown. Who were these guys?
So think of them as like the rock star intellectuals of their day.
Okay.
They challenged traditional Athenian values or
Right.
promoted new ways of thinking, and they weren't afraid to charge a pretty drachma for their wisdom.
I see. So they were controversial figures.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Okay.
They had their fans, they had their critics, definitely.
Okay, so Socrates becomes this lightning rod for all the anxieties that people had about these new ideas.
Exactly.
But here's where it gets really, really intriguing. Our source actually points out that Socrates, in reality, actually disagreed with a lot of the Sophists' teachings. It even says that Plato was frustrated by this portrayal of his mentor
Oh yeah.
in the play.
Which begs the question, why make Socrates the target if he wasn't even like a card-carrying sophist?
Right, yeah.
Was Aristophanes simply going for the biggest laugh he could get, or was he making a more nuanced point? Yeah. By choosing this particular figure, it's something to really consider as we kind of move forward deeper into the play.
It's like Aristophanes is almost daring us to look beyond the surface.
Right.
Question our assumptions about these figures and really uncover that deeper message behind the laugh.
Absolutely. And speaking of challenging assumptions, we should probably talk about the play's hilarious debate on education.
Yes.
Old versus new.
Oh, yes. The Clash of the Titans.
Yes.
The Battle of the Logoi, right?
Yes.
One side representing that traditional education.
Right.
The other, this new sophistic approach. It's like watching a rap battle between Aristotle and a philosophy professor who just joined TikTok.
What's so fascinating is that Aristophanes actually gives us a glimpse into the core values of each side.
Okay.
Right. So on the one hand, you've got like the embodiment of traditional philosophy, emphasizing discipline, respect for customs, physical strength. I mean, the source material even it draws a stark contrast, stating that this approach favors marathon runners, not metrosexuals.
Okay, I can already picture that visual. All right, so we've got traditional philosophy.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the stage, we've got sophistry kind of like strutting in.
Right.
All about cleverness, rhetoric, questioning absolutely everything.
And not just questioning, but using logic.
Yeah.
Sometimes in ways that that might have made traditionalists raise an eyebrow or two,
So it's not as black and white as simply saying, one side is good, the other one's bad, or old equals right, new equals wrong. Aristophanes is doing something a lot more subtle here.
He's implying that this blind faith in tradition can be just as potentially risky as blindly embracing the new.
Okay.
It's about finding that balance.
Right.
That critical thinking that allows you to navigate a world full of these competing ideas, which, let's face it, is something we can all relate to even today.
Absolutely. More relevant than ever, I'd say.
Oh, yeah.
But what about the clouds themselves? They're not just, background singers in this satirical symphony, are they?
You're really picking up on some key themes here.
Okay.
The chorus of clouds represents something much, much deeper. There are these alluring, seductive figures, right? Embodying these promises of ambition, intellectual pride. However, as the play progresses, we find out that those promises are, well, they're ultimately empty.
It's like those shiny objects that we're all, drawn to, right? Things that promise the world but often leave us with nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
And to make it even more complicated, the clouds themselves, they admit to enjoying leading people astray.
Precisely. And that raises a really crucial question, don't you think, about personal responsibility.
Right.
In a world overflowing with appealing but potentially harmful ideas, how much control do we actually have over our choices? Are we just pawns in some elaborate game orchestrated by these clouds? Or do we have the agency to actually think for ourselves? Resist those seductive whispers and forge our own paths.
Right. It's fascinating to think how this ancient play, right, it speaks to like the challenges we're facing today with like information overload.
Right.
We're constantly bombarded with these enticing ideas and promises.
Yeah.
But are they leading us down the right path, or are we just chasing clouds?
That's the question, isn't it? That Aristophanes really wants us to grapple with.
Yeah.
And it's particularly relevant when you consider the play's ending.
Okay.
Spoiler alert, it doesn't exactly paint the rosiest picture for those who fall under the sway of the clouds. Our source even describes the final scene as this cautionary tale of intellectual hubris and its consequences.
Okay, so we've got these seductive clouds, a society grappling with change, and like a healthy dose of skepticism about the pursuit of knowledge.
Yeah.
Aristophanes really wasn't afraid to tackle some big ideas in this comedy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And let's not forget, he does it all through this lens of humor.
Right.
For example, when he's describing the sophist's educational approach, he actually has one of his characters just straight up declare, "I'll prove that the right way is wrong and the wrong way is right."
It's like he's saying, don't take yourselves too seriously, folks. But beneath that humor, there's a lot to unpack about the values of Athenian society, both the old and the new.
Exactly. And it's interesting to see how he uses the characters in the clouds to really kind of explore those contrasting values. You've got Strepsiades representing like the older generation, desperate to cling to tradition, but also easily swayed by the allure of like quick fixes.
Right.
And these clever arguments.
Kind of reminds me of that saying, there's a sucker born every minute.
Right. And then you've got his son, Phidippides, who fully embraces that sophistic approach, right?
Right.
Using his newfound rhetorical skills to justify all sorts of, well, let's just say questionable behavior.
So it sounds like a classic generational clash.
Yeah.
But Aristophanes is showing us that both extremes have their pitfalls.
Yep.
Blindly clinging to the past can be just as detrimental as blindly chasing after every shiny new idea.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's this reminder that true wisdom, it lies somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
In being able to critically assess both the old and the new, to really discern between what's, genuine knowledge and just mere sophistry.
So in a way, Aristophanes he's advocating for this more balanced and nuanced approach.
Yeah.
Right. One that values critical thinking and careful consideration over blind faith or easy answers.
That's a great way to put it. And I think that's a message that really, really continues to resonate even today, right? In a world that's so saturated with information, I think it's more important than ever to really develop those critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
To question what we see and hear.
Mm-hmm.
And to be wary of those who promise simple solutions to very, very complex problems.
It's like we need to become our own personal fact checkers, right?
Yes.
To filter through all the noise and figure out what's really worth paying attention to.
Exactly. We need to learn to recognize the clouds in our own lives.
Okay.
Those alluring ideas, those ideologies, those even technologies
Right.
that promise us the world but may actually lead us astray.
This has been such an eye-opening dive. Aristophanes may have been writing about, ancient Athens, but it's clear that he was really tapping into some timeless truths about human nature and the challenges that we face in navigating a world that's just full of choices and competing ideas.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's giving us this like playbook, right?
Yeah.
For navigating this world of ideas, even over 2,000 years later. So if we're looking for that balanced approach, right, that ability to really kind of see through the clouds, what can we learn from the clouds itself?
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways is this need to question everything.
Okay.
Like Aristophanes, he really encourages us to engage with ideas, both old and new, not with this blind acceptance, but with, a healthy dose of skepticism.
Yeah.
He uses humor to kind of challenge our assumptions, right? And show us that things aren't always what they seem.
It's like he's saying, like, don't just take my word for it. Think for yourselves.
Exactly.
Which is a powerful message, especially in a world where it's so easy to get, swept up in trends and groupthink and all of that.
Oh, absolutely. And another important lesson, I think, from the clouds is this danger of intellectual pride.
Okay.
The characters who are most easily seduced by the clouds are often those who are blinded by their own, perceived intelligence or their ambition.
Right.
They get so caught up in the allure of cleverness and novelty that they kind of lose sight of common sense and real wisdom.
It's a cautionary tale about the pitfalls of intellectual arrogance. Right.
Yes.
It reminds me of that saying, a little knowledge can be a dangerous thing.
Right.
Or in this case, a cloud of knowledge.
Exactly. Aristophanes, he seems to be saying that true wisdom, it involves humility. Recognizing that we don't have all the answers and being open to learning from different perspectives.
Yeah.
Even those that we might initially disagree with.
So we've got this call for critical thinking, this warning about intellectual pride.
Yeah.
And ultimately this reminder that the pursuit of knowledge, it's a journey, not a destination.
Yes.
And sometimes the most important thing is knowing which clouds to chase and which ones to just kind of let drift on by.
Well said. Aristophanes, I think he invites us to approach the world with this balance of curiosity. Yeah. And skepticism, right? Always questioning.
Right.
Always kind of seeking that deeper meaning and never underestimating the power of a good laugh along the way.
That is a wrap on Aristophanes' The Clouds. A hilarious and thought-provoking play about education, societal change, and the ever-relevant challenge of navigating a world that's just awash in information and ideas.
It really is.
So the next time you're faced with like a shiny new idea or someone promising easy answers, remember the clouds. Take a step back, ask the tough questions, and hey, maybe even have a little chuckle at the absurdity of it all. You might just find yourselves a little wiser for it.